Manhattan sunlight cut through floor-to-ceiling windows, painting the bedroom in shades of amber and gold. Dominic Sterling stepped through the doorway, two porcelain cups balanced in his hands, the rich scent of Colombian dark roast trailing behind him. At 44, he carried himself with a kind of quiet authority that came from building empires rather than inheriting them. Salt and pepper hair, impeccably trimmed, charcoal silk robe that cost more than most people's monthly rent, eyes the color of storm clouds over the Atlantic. He froze mid-stride. The white Egyptian cotton sheets, 1,200 thread count, ordered from a boutique in Soho, bore a stain the shade of dark wine. Not wine, blood. Unmistakable. A bloom of crimson against pristine white, stark as a confession written in ink that couldn't be erased. The cups trembled in his grip. Coffee sloshed against bone china but didn't spill. 20 years of negotiating billion-dollar deals had taught him to control his hands, even when his mind reeled. But this unraveled something fundamental in his chest. Evangeline Whitmore stood framed in the bathroom doorway, 32 years old and wearing his white dress shirt like armor that didn't quite fit. The fabric hung to her thighs, sleeves rolled past her wrists. Her dark auburn hair, usually pulled into a severe professional bun, fell in waves past her shoulders. Even from across the room, he could see the terror in her hazel eyes. The way her fingers clutched the doorframe, the slight tremor in her shoulders that she was failing, to suppress. His voice emerged rougher than intended, scraped raw by the realization crashing through him. Eva. She didn't move, barely breathed. A deer caught in headlights, except this deer was brilliant, capable, and had just revealed a secret that changed everything he thought he knew about last night. The blood. He set the cups on the dresser with deliberate care, buying himself seconds to process what his brain already understood, but his heart couldn't quite accept. That's yours? A nod, barely perceptible. Her throat worked, but no sound emerged. Dominic moved toward her slowly, the way someone approaches a wounded animal. Each step measured, careful. His pulse hammered against his ribs. Why didn't you tell me you were still a virgin? The word hung in the air between them, heavy as an accusation neither of them wanted to make. Eva's chin lifted slightly, that defiant tilt he'd seen in boardrooms when she was defending a strategic position against skeptical executives twice her age. But her voice came out small, fractured. Because you wouldn't have wanted me if you knew. Something sharp twisted in his chest. He closed the distance, hand reaching for her shoulder before he consciously decided to move. His palms settled against white cotton, feeling the rapid flutter of her pulse through fabric and skin. Wouldn't have wanted you? Eva, I've wanted you since the day you walked into my office 8 months ago. Her eyes widened. Disbelief warred with hope across features he'd memorized during countless late-night meetings. The small scar above her left eyebrow, the way she bit her lower lip when concentrating on financial models, the exact shade of green that threaded through hazel when she laughed. Did I hurt you? The question tore from somewhere deep, primal. The thought of causing her pain, not knowing, not treating her first time with the reverence it deserved, made his stomach clench. Last night, this morning, did I hurt you? Her voice cracked. She swallowed hard, tried again. At first, but you were gentle. You stopped when I tensed. You waited until I was ready. Gentle. The word mocked him. He'd been desperate, hungry, 6 months of restraint finally breaking like a dam that couldn't hold anymore. He'd tried to be careful, yes, but if he'd known, God, if he'd only known. If you'd told me. He stopped, realized his fingers were gripping her shoulder too tight, and forced himself to ease up. Eva, your first time should have been perfect. Candles and music and everything you deserved. Not. He gestured helplessly at the bedroom, the rumpled sheets, the evidence of what they'd done. Not like this. Something shifted in her expression. The fear receded slightly, replaced by something fiercer. She pulled away from his touch, standing straighter. Don't. Don't what? Don't rewrite last night into something it wasn't. Her voice steadied, found the steel he recognized from when she dismantled competitors' proposals in strategy meetings. I chose you, Dominic. I chose this. The only thing I regret is that you found out this way instead of me being brave enough to tell you beforehand. The words hit him harder than they should have. He'd spent 3 years after Victoria's departure convinced he was too damaged, too focused on work, too fundamentally broken to deserve someone's trust. And Eva, brilliant, guarded Eva who kept everyone at arm's length, had chosen to give him something she'd protected for 32 years. How long? He heard himself ask. How long have you been waiting? She moved past him into the bedroom, arms wrapped around herself despite the morning warmth. When she spoke, she addressed the window rather than him. My mother had me when she was 17. My father denied I was his, called her a liar, said she'd been with multiple men. She raised me alone, 3 jobs, no help. I watched men look at her like she was less than nothing because she was a single mother, like she'd made some terrible choice and deserved to struggle. Dominic's throat tightened. He'd known the bare facts. Eva's personnel file listed her mother as her emergency contact, father marked as unknown. But knowing and understanding were different countries entirely. I promised myself at 12 years old that I would never end up like her. Eva's reflection in the glass showed a face carved from determination and old fear. I would finish school, build a career, become financially independent before I let any man close enough to ruin me. And I would never, ever give myself to someone unless I was absolutely certain they wouldn't destroy me. 32 years, he said quietly, understanding blooming into something that felt too large for his chest. You waited 32 years to find someone who felt safe. I dated. She turned to face him, and the vulnerability in her eyes nearly broke him. I kissed 3 men before you. One in college who tried to push for more, and I panicked. One at McKinsey who seemed nice until he wasn't. One blind date my roommate set up who treated me like I should be grateful for his attention. The thought of other men touching her, pushing her, making her feel small, ignited something dark and possessive in his gut. He shoved it down. This wasn't about his jealousy. This was about her trust. And then me. He moved closer, slowly, giving her space to retreat if she needed it. A man 18 years older, your boss, someone with all the power in the relationship. Eva, I'm exactly the kind of man you should have run from. I know. The admission came soft but certain. That's why it took me 6 months to let myself feel anything. 6 months of watching you, testing you, waiting for you to show your true colors. And what colors did I show? She met his gaze fully then, and what he saw there made his breath catch. Trust. Real, hard-earned, terrifying trust. You respected me. Listened to my ideas even when they contradicted yours. Gave me credit in meetings. Never made a single inappropriate comment or touch. You waited for me to make the first move last night. You let me be in control. The memory surfaced unbidden. Eva standing from her desk at 10 p.m., crossing to where he'd been reviewing contracts, her hand on his shoulder, the question in her eyes when she'd leaned down, the way she'd hesitated before pressing her lips to his, giving him every chance to pull away. I wanted you so badly I could barely think, he admitted. But you work for me. I couldn't make that move. I couldn't put you in a position where saying no meant risking your career. I know. Her lips curved into something almost like a smile. That's why I trusted you enough to say yes. The moment stretched between them, fragile as spun glass. Dominic wanted to pull her close, kiss her until the fear in her eyes disappeared entirely, promise her things he'd never promised anyone. But the blood on the sheets was a reminder he couldn't ignore. Let me take care of you, he gestured toward the bathroom. A warm bath will help with the soreness. Then breakfast. Then we talk about what this means. What this means? Uncertainty crept back into her voice. For us? For work? For everything. He caught her hand, threading their fingers together. The gesture felt monumental, more intimate than anything they'd done last night. Eva, I don't do casual. If I'm with someone, I'm all in, exclusive, committed. But you need to understand what you're signing up for. I'm difficult, obsessive about work. I've failed at relationships before because I couldn't give enough emotionally. Victoria. The name landed like a stone dropped in still water. He told her the bare minimum about his ex-fiancée during their 6 months working together. Enough that she wouldn't be blindsided if Victoria's name came up in business circles. Not enough to reveal how badly that failure still stung. She wanted me to love her the way she loved me, he said carefully. I tried, but I was building the Chicago expansion and every spare moment went into work. She said I was marrying the company, not her. She was probably right. And now? Now I'm still obsessed with work, still driven, still the same man who couldn't balance a relationship and an empire. He brought her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. But I want to try, with you, if you're willing to risk it. She studied him with those sharp hazel eyes that missed nothing. What are you asking me, Dominic? To be mine, exclusively. To let me try to be better than I was with Victoria. To build something real, even though the timing is terrible and the optics are worse, and we'll have to hide it from the office for months. Hide it? The words came out sharp. For how long? Long enough that you can prove yourself without anyone thinking you slept your way into promotions. He hated the necessity of it, but corporate politics were ruthless. 6 months minimum, maybe longer, until your track record speaks for itself. Eva pulled her hand free, wrapped her arms around herself again. So at work, we're boss and employee, distant, professional. And after hours? After hours, you're mine, and I'm yours. He stepped closer, tilted her chin up with gentle fingers. I know it's not ideal. I know you deserve better than sneaking around. But I won't let office gossip destroy what you've worked for. She searched his face for a long moment. Whatever she found there must have satisfied her, because her shoulders relaxed fractionally. Okay, we try, but rules. Name them. At the office, completely professional. No special treatment, no favoritism. You critique my work as hard as anyone else's. Done. If either of us feels like we can't handle the dual roles, we say something immediately. Agreed. And Dominic? Her voice dropped lower, intimate. If we do this, you can't protect me from every hard thing. I need to fight my own battles. Stand on my own merit. The request cut deeper than she probably intended. Protection was coded into his DNA, reinforced by years of taking care of his mother after his father's death. But Eva was right. Shielding her would only confirm what people would already suspect. I'll try, he promised, but it won't be easy watching people underestimate you. They've been underestimating me my whole life. She rose on her toes, pressed a quick kiss to his jaw. I'm used to it. The casual intimacy of the gesture undid something in his chest. This brilliant, wounded woman had chosen him, trusted him with something precious. The weight of that responsibility settled over his shoulders like a mantle he couldn't afford to shrug off. Bath first, he said, voice rougher than intended. Then I'm making you breakfast and we're spending the day here. No work, no phone calls, just us. You're going to cook? Skepticism laced her tone. I can make pancakes and eggs without burning down the kitchen. Probably. He caught her hand, tugged her toward the bathroom. Come on. Let me take care of you, just for today. She let him lead her, and that simple act of trust meant more than she could possibly know. The bathroom was all marble and chrome, ostentatious in the way Manhattan penthouses demanded. Dominic started the bath, adjusting the temperature until steam rose in gentle clouds. He added bath salts from a container his decorator had insisted on that he'd never used. The scent of eucalyptus and lavender filled the air. Eva stood in the doorway, watching him with an expression he couldn't quite read. When the tub was half full, he straightened, gave her space. "Take your time," he said. "I'll be in the kitchen." But she caught his sleeve before he could leave. "Dominic, thank you." "For what?" "For not being angry that I didn't tell you." Her voice wavered slightly. "For not making me feel like I did something wrong." The words gutted him. That she'd been bracing for anger, for rejection, for punishment. It spoke volumes about the men she'd encountered before him, about the world that taught women their boundaries were inconveniences rather than lines that demanded respect. "Eva." He turned fully, framed her face with both hands. "You gave me a gift I didn't earn and definitely didn't deserve. I could spend the rest of my life trying to be worthy of that trust and still fall short. Angry is the last thing I am." Her eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She'd learned young that tears were weaknesses powerful men could exploit. He hated that she'd had to learn that lesson. "Go," he said gently. "Relax, I'll bring you coffee." This time, she let him go. In the kitchen, Dominic tried to remember the last time he'd cooked for someone. His mother, probably, before the cancer took her 5 years ago, before he'd thrown himself into work to avoid grief. The penthouse kitchen was designer perfect and largely unused. He paid a meal service to stock his fridge with prepared food. Cooking had seemed like a waste of billable hours, but for Eva, he'd learn. He found eggs, butter, bread, pancake mix that was probably expired but smelled fine, coffee beans that cost $40 a pound. As he worked, muscle memory took over. His mother had insisted he learn basic cooking before leaving for college. "No son of mine is going to starve because he can't crack an egg," she'd said. The memory hurt less than it used to. Time had sanded the sharp edges of grief into something he could hold without bleeding. The coffee maker hissed and gurgled. He poured a cup, black, 2 sugars, the way Eva took it, and carried it to the bathroom. Knocked softly on the door. "Come in." She was submerged to her shoulders in bubbles, hair piled on top of her head. The vulnerable curve of her neck made something protective and possessive coil tight in his gut. He set the coffee on the marble ledge beside the tub. "How are you feeling?" "Sore," she admitted, "but the heat helps." He knelt beside the tub, trailing fingers through the water. "I should have been more careful." "You were careful. I was just new to it." She caught his hand beneath the water, squeezed. "Stop beating yourself up. I wanted everything that happened. Even the parts that hurt, especially those." Her gaze held his, steady and sure, because they meant something. They weren't casual or meaningless. They were me choosing you, all of you, including the parts that require trust. A quote-worthy line if he'd ever heard one, though he'd never tell her so. She'd accuse him of being sentimental, but the words lodged in his chest, warm and permanent. "Breakfast in 20 minutes, he said, rising. "Don't fall asleep in there." "Yes, sir." The teasing lilt made him smile despite everything. "Save the 'sir' for the office, Miss Whitmore." Her laugh followed him out of the bathroom, and the sound felt like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. Pancakes proved more challenging than eggs. The first batch burned. The second came out raw in the middle. The third was passable if you didn't look too closely. He plated them anyway, added scrambled eggs and toast, arranged everything on a tray with fresh coffee and orange juice. Eva emerged wrapped in his robe, navy silk that drowned her smaller frame. Her hair was damp, face scrubbed clean of the subtle makeup she usually wore. Without the professional armor, she looked younger, more vulnerable, absolutely devastating. They ate in the living room, Eva curled on the leather sofa, while morning light painted Manhattan in shades of gold. The silence was comfortable, easy, like they'd been doing this for years instead of hours. "These pancakes are terrible," she said after the third bite. "I know. The eggs are good, though. I'll stick to eggs." She smiled, and the expression transformed her face from pretty to luminous. He wanted to memorize this moment, Eva in his robe, eating his mediocre cooking, completely at ease in his space. It felt dangerously like the future he'd stopped letting himself imagine. "What happens Monday?" she asked, setting her plate aside. "When we go back to the office?" "Monday, you're my strategic advisor. Brilliant, professional, and completely off limits. And Tuesday night? Tuesday night, you're mine." He caught her hand, threaded their fingers together. "If you want to be." "I want to be." No hesitation, no doubt, just that steady certainty that made his chest tight. "But Dominic, I need you to understand something. I'm not like Victoria. I'm not going to demand you choose between me and your work. I know what I signed up for." "Eva, let me finish." She shifted closer, her knee pressing against his thigh. "I've been watching you for 6 months. I know you work 70-hour weeks. I know you take calls at midnight and answer emails at 5 a.m. I know Sterling Development is your legacy, your purpose, the thing you built from nothing. I'm not asking you to change that." "Then what are you asking?" "When you're with me, be with me, fully present, not thinking about deals or contracts or the next project. Can you do that?" The question exposed him in ways he wasn't prepared for. Victoria had accused him of never being fully present, of mentally reviewing financial models during dinner, of checking his phone during conversations. She'd been right. He'd tried to split himself between work and relationship and failed at both. "I can try," he said carefully, "but I've never been good at shutting work off completely." "I'm not asking you to shut it off." Her thumb traced circles on his palm. "I'm asking you to compartmentalize. When you're here with me, put the phone down. Look at me. Listen. Be in the moment. That's all." It sounded simple. It probably wasn't. But for her, he'd try. "Okay. Okay? I'll be present. When I'm with you, I'm all yours." He lifted her hand to his lips, pressed a kiss to her knuckles. "But you have to promise me something too." "What?" "If I slip back into old habits, call me on it. Don't let resentment build. Don't assume I don't care just because I'm distracted." Understanding flickered across her face. "Victoria didn't tell you when she was unhappy." Not until she was already gone. The admission cost him, but honesty seemed like the least he owed her. She built up months of disappointment and rage, and then dumped it all at once. By the time I understood how badly I'd failed, it was too late to fix anything. Eva shifted onto his lap, straddling him in a way that made his pulse spike despite their conversation. Her hands framed his face, forcing him to meet her eyes. "I'm not her. If something bothers me, I'll tell you, immediately, loudly if necessary. I don't do passive-aggressive silence. Promise?" "Cross my heart." She drew an X over her chest, the gesture somehow both innocent and devastating. "Now kiss me before these terrible pancakes kill the mood entirely." He laughed, actual, genuine laughter that felt foreign after months of corporate restraint, and pulled her closer. The kiss started gentle, exploring, but heat built quickly between them, familiar and new all at once. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Eva rested her forehead against his. "We should probably talk about logistics." "Logistics?" "Like where we do this. Your place or mine? How often? What if someone from the office sees us?" Practical questions that deserved thoughtful answers. Dominic forced his brain to shift gears from desire to strategy. "My place is safer. Your Brooklyn apartment has neighbors who might recognize me from business press. Here, I own the entire floor. Complete privacy. So I'm always coming to you? Unless you prefer your place?" He caught the slight tension in her shoulders. "Eva, this isn't about convenience. If you're more comfortable in your space, we'll make it work." She relaxed fractionally. "Your place makes sense. I just don't want to feel like the mistress being hidden away." The word landed like a punch. He tightened his arms around her waist. "You're not a mistress. You're my girlfriend. The woman I'm dating. The only person I want to be with. We're hiding the relationship from the office, not from the world. But we can't go out in public together, can't be seen at restaurants or events, can't even walk down the street holding hands. Not in Manhattan, he agreed, but I have a house in the Hamptons, private, isolated. We can go there on weekends, be ourselves, do normal couple things. Hope flickered in her eyes. Normal couple things? Cooking dinner, walking on the beach, watching movies, whatever people do when they're not worried about Bloomberg photographers. He tucked a damp strand of hair behind her ear. I know it's not ideal. I know you deserve better than sneaking around, but give me 6 months to prove this is real, to prove you earned your position based on merit. Then we go public and damn the consequences. She studied him for a long moment, weighing risks against rewards in that analytical way he'd learned to recognize. Finally, she nodded. 6 months. But Dominic? Yeah. If at any point this starts to hurt more than it helps, we reevaluate. Deal? Deal. He sealed it with a kiss, gentle and sure. The rest of the day dissolved into lazy domesticity. They watched old movies on his rarely used television, ordered Thai food when hunger struck again, talked about everything and nothing, her favorite books, his failed attempt at learning piano, places they wanted to travel, dreams they'd stopped letting themselves acknowledge. As afternoon faded to evening, Eva curled against his side on the sofa, her breathing slow and even. Not quite asleep, but deeply relaxed in a way he suspected was rare for her. Dominic let his own eyes drift closed, content in a way he hadn't been in years. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Work email. Always work. He reached for it automatically, muscle memory taking over. Hey, Eva's voice, soft but alert. You promised to be present. He froze, phone in hand. The email was from Harrison about the Dallas project. Important but not urgent. Nothing that couldn't wait until Monday. He set the phone down, screen facing the table. Sorry, old habits. It's okay. She shifted to look at him, hair mussed from the sofa cushion. But Dominic, if this is going to work, you have to trust that Sterling Development won't crumble if you take one weekend off. I know. He pulled her closer, pressed a kiss to her temple. I'm trying. I know you are. Her hand found his over his heart, squeezed gently. And that's enough. It didn't feel like enough. It felt like standing on a cliff edge, trying to balance work and relationship when he'd already proven he couldn't manage both. But Eva trusted him to try, and that trust was more precious than any deal he'd ever closed. Sunday morning arrived too quickly. They made coffee together in his kitchen, Eva stealing his t-shirt and looking criminally good in it. The domesticity of the moment, her humming while she searched for mugs, him burning toast yet again, felt surreal and perfect. I should probably go home, she said eventually. Get clothes for tomorrow. Prepare for the week. Or you could stay. The words escaped before he'd fully thought them through. I mean, you could keep some clothes here. Make this easier. She turned to face him, coffee mug cradled in both hands. Dominic Sterling, are you asking me to move in? No, maybe. Partially? He ran a hand through his hair, frustrated at his own uncertainty. I'm asking if you want a drawer, some closet space, so you don't have to plan overnight stays like military operations. A smile tugged at her lips. A drawer sounds good, but I'm keeping my apartment. I wouldn't ask you to give it up. He crossed to her, wrapped his arms around her waist from behind. Your independence matters. I'm just offering convenience. Convenience? She leaned back against him, and he felt her smile. Is that what we're calling it? Would you prefer I get sentimental and declare my undying devotion? God, no. I'd never let you live it down. She turned in his arms, looped hers around his neck. But a drawer works. Maybe two if I'm feeling bold. Take the whole closet if you want. Careful, I might actually do that. He kissed her then, slow and deep, memorizing the taste of coffee and promise on her lips. Tomorrow they go back to being boss and employee, distant, professional, careful not to let their eyes linger too long or their hands brush accidentally. But tonight, she was his, and he was hers. And for now, that was enough. Evening crept in through the windows, painting the penthouse in shades of amber and shadow. Eva eventually left to gather clothes and essentials from her Brooklyn apartment, promising to return before dark. Dominic used the time to clear space in his closet and dresser, a strangely intimate act that made the arrangement feel more real. When she returned, overnight bags slung over her shoulder, she found him rearranging hangers with the focused intensity he usually reserved for contract negotiations. "You color-coded your suits," she observed, laughter in her voice. "It's efficient. It's adorable." She set her bag down, moved to help him. "Where do you want me?" The double meaning wasn't lost on either of them. He caught her around the waist, pulled her flush against him. "Right here works." They didn't make it to the bedroom. The couch proved sufficient, and this time, knowing what he knew, understanding what she was giving him, Dominic took his time. Gentle, but thorough. Learning what made her gasp, what made her grip his shoulders, what made her whisper his name like a prayer. Afterward, tangled together in the dimming light, Eva traced idle patterns on his chest. "Tomorrow is going to be strange. Pretending we barely know each other? Pretending I didn't spend the weekend in your bed." She propped herself up on one elbow, hazel eyes serious. "Can we really pull this off?" "We have to." He caught her hand, pressed it flat against his sternum. "Your career depends on it. Our relationship depends on it. We can handle 6 months of discretion." She didn't look convinced, but she nodded anyway. 6 months, then we reevaluate. Then we go public and everyone can think whatever they want. He meant it. Let them gossip. Let them speculate. 6 months from now, Eva would have a track record that spoke for itself. No one would be able to claim she hadn't earned her position. They ordered dinner, Italian this time, and ate in companionable silence. Later they moved to the bedroom properly, Eva claiming one drawer and then promptly filling 3. Dominic watched her arrange toiletries in his bathroom, hang dresses beside his suits, and felt something shift permanently in his chest. This was what he'd missed with Victoria. Not the grand gestures or romantic declarations, but the quiet intimacy of shared space. Toothbrushes side by side, her coffee mug next to his, the subtle scent of her shampoo lingering in the bathroom. Monday morning shattered the illusion with the subtlety of a sledgehammer. Eva left his apartment at 6, heading back to Brooklyn to change into work clothes and create the appearance of arriving from her own place. Dominic followed his usual routine: gym, shower, coffee while reviewing overnight emails, but everything felt slightly off-kilter now. The apartment too quiet without her humming in the shower. The coffee too bitter without her stealing sips from his cup. He arrived at Sterling Development at 7:30, the building still mostly empty. His office occupied the entire 42nd floor, excessive perhaps, but a symbol of how far he'd climbed from the construction worker's son who couldn't afford college textbooks. Harrison Blake was already waiting, coffee in hand and tablet loaded with the week's priorities. At 52, Harrison had been with Sterling Development since the beginning. Friend before employee, the only person Dominic trusted completely. "Morning." Harrison's sharp gaze tracked over him, assessing. "Good weekend?" "Productive." The word felt like a lie and a truth simultaneously. Productive. Harrison's lips quirked. "That's one word for it." Dominic froze mid-step toward his desk. "What do you mean?" "Relax, I'm not commenting on your personal life." Harrison settled into the chair opposite Dominic's desk with the ease of long familiarity. "But you might want to work on your poker face. You look too relaxed for a man who supposedly spent the weekend reviewing Dallas proposals." "I did review Dallas proposals. Friday night, before Eva had changed everything." "Sure you did." Harrison pulled up his tablet. "Speaking of Dallas, Marcus Thornton's team reached out. They want to meet this week. Compare notes on the project parameters. The mention of Thornton soured Dominic's improved mood instantly. Marcus Thornton, ruthless, connected, willing to cut corners Dominic wouldn't touch. They'd been competing for contracts since Dominic's company first broke into major development 7 years ago. Thornton had won some. Dominic had won more. The rivalry had calcified into mutual professional hatred. Tell them Wednesday, conference room B, and make sure Eva's there. Eva? Harrison's eyebrow rose fractionally. Specific request or strategic necessity? She's our best strategic analyst. If Thornton's playing games, I want her reading the room. Fair enough, Harrison made a note. Anything else you want to tell me? The question hung loaded between them. Harrison knew, or suspected, or had simply worked with Dominic long enough to recognize the subtle shifts in mood and priority. Nothing relevant to Sterling development. Dominic met his friend's gaze steadily. My personal life stays personal. As long as your personal life doesn't become a corporate liability. Harrison's tone stayed neutral, but the warning was clear. Dominic, you're a public figure, CEO of a billion-dollar company. If you're dating someone, anyone, it needs to be handled carefully. I'm aware. Are you? Harrison leaned forward, abandoning the pretense of reviewing his tablet. Because the last time you tried to balance relationship and business, it ended with Victoria leaving and you working 100-hour weeks for 6 months straight. The memory stung more than it should have. Victoria's final words still echoed sometimes late at night. You'll never love anything as much as you love winning. This is different. The words emerged with more conviction than Dominic had expected. Different how? She understands what she's signing up for. He thought of Eva's request. When you're with me, be with me, fully present, not asking him to change, just to be better at compartmentalizing. She's not asking me to choose. Harrison studied him for a long moment, and whatever he saw must have satisfied him because he nodded slowly. Then I wish you luck. God knows you deserve some happiness. The conversation shifted to safer territory. Dallas timelines, Chicago's quarterly reports, permitting delays in Miami. Business as usual. But Dominic found his attention fragmenting in ways it never had before. Part of his brain tracking the time until Eva arrived at 8:30. She entered the office precisely on schedule, professional in a navy suit that probably cost a quarter of her monthly salary. Hair pulled back in that severe bun. Minimal makeup. The transformation from the woman who'd stolen his t-shirt yesterday to this polished corporate weapon was jarring. Their eyes met across the open floor plan. For a heartbeat, he saw recognition flare in her gaze, heat in memory, and the echo of everything they'd shared this weekend. Then she blinked, and the warmth disappeared behind professional distance. She nodded once. Mr. Sterling. Mrs. Whitmore. His voice came out colder than intended, overcompensating for the warmth building in his chest. My office. 10 minutes. We need to review the Dallas strategy. Yes, sir. She walked past without another glance, heels clicking against marble with crisp efficiency. Every eye in the office tracked her movement. Lillian Cross, another analyst, younger than Eva and hungry for advancement, watched with barely concealed resentment. Others simply looked curious. Dominic forced himself to turn away, to pretend the sight of Eva at her desk didn't make his pulse spike. This was going to be harder than he'd anticipated. The 10 minutes crawled past with agonizing slowness. When Eva finally knocked on his office door, he'd managed to wrestle his expression into something approximating professional detachment. Come in. She closed the door behind her, standard for confidential business discussions, and settled into the chair opposite his desk. Everything about her posture screamed competent professional. Shoulders back, spine straight, hands folded in her lap. But her eyes, God, her eyes held laughter barely suppressed, a shared secret dancing just beneath the surface. This is going to be impossible, she said quietly. Completely, he wanted to cross to her, pull her from that chair, kiss her until the careful professionalism shattered. But we knew that going in. Knowing it and experiencing it are different. She glanced toward the door, confirming it was fully closed. Dominic, Lillian Cross looked at me like I'd stolen her puppy. Lillian's ambitious and threatened by your competence. That's not new. No, but it's worse now. Eva's fingers drummed against her thigh, a nervous tell she rarely showed. She cornered me by the coffee machine, asked how my weekend was. I said fine. She said she saw me getting into a car Saturday night and did I have a hot date. Ice crystallized in Dominic's stomach. What did you tell her? That it was a lift taking me home from drinks with a friend. Eva's gaze held his. But Dominic, she's watching. They're all watching. Let them watch. He forced confidence into his tone that he didn't entirely feel. You're brilliant at your job. 6 months from now, when your track record is undeniable, it won't matter what they suspect now. You're assuming I can maintain this performance while hiding a relationship. I'm assuming we both can. He leaned forward, elbows on his desk. Eva, if this is too much, don't. She cut him off with a sharp gesture. Don't give me an out. Not yet. I want this. Want us. I just needed to voice the concern. The tension in his shoulders eased fractionally. Okay, then we adapt. We're more careful about pickups and drop-offs. We vary our patterns. A knock on the door interrupted his planning. Harrison stuck his head in without waiting for acknowledgement. Dominic, Marcus Thornton's online too. Says it's urgent. Dominic bit back a curse. Tell him I'll call back in an hour. He says it's about Dallas. Claims he has information you'll want to hear. Eva's eyes sharpened, strategic mind clearly already running scenarios. Dominic weighed options and decided transparency beats speculation. Put him through. Eva, stay. I want your read on whatever game he's playing. Harrison disappeared. The phone line blinked red. Dominic hit the speaker button with more force than necessary. Thornton, what do you want? Sterling. Marcus Thornton's voice oozed false bonhomie through the speaker. I'm calling as a courtesy, professional to professional. We've never been colleagues, Marcus. Get to the point. The Dallas project. I'm withdrawing my bid. Silence fell like a stone. Dominic exchanged a glance with Eva, saw his own suspicion mirrored in her expression. Why? Let's just say I've decided to focus resources elsewhere. A pause loaded with implication. But I wanted to congratulate you on your new strategic advisor. Evangeline Whitmore, right? Very impressive credentials. Every muscle in Dominic's body went rigid. Beside him, Eva's face had drained of color. My hiring decisions aren't your concern. Of course not. Thornton's laugh scraped like gravel. I'm just admiring your taste. Smart, beautiful, and I hear she's very dedicated to her work. The innuendo landed like a slap. Dominic's hand clenched around the phone so hard the plastic creaked. Careful, Marcus. I'm simply making an observation. You've always had a weakness for brilliant women. Victoria, now Ms. Whitmore. I hope this one works out better than the last. The line went dead before Dominic could respond. Eva stared at the phone, expression frozen in something between shock and fury. When she finally spoke, her voice emerged flat and carefully controlled. He knows. He suspects. Dominic forced himself to unclench his fist, roll his shoulders back. But suspicion isn't proof. He mentioned Victoria. Eva's gaze snapped to his. How does he know about your engagement? Victoria's his legal counsel now. She probably told him. The pieces clicked together with sickening clarity. She wants revenge, and Marcus wants leverage. They're working together. To do what? Ruin us? To distract me, undermine you, make sure I'm too busy dealing with corporate drama to focus on winning contracts. Dominic stood, paced to the window overlooking Manhattan. 42 floors below, the city churned with millions of people who had no idea how fragile power really was. It's a smart play, actually. Attack the relationship to weaken the business. Eva rose and moved to stand beside him, maintaining careful distance but radiating support. What do? We prove them wrong. He turned to face her fully, letting steel enter his voice. You focus on Dallas. Make our proposal so strong that even if Thornton re-enters the bidding, we win on merit. I'll handle Victoria and Marcus. Dominic, Eva, I need you to trust me on this. He caught her hand briefly, squeezed once, then released before anyone passing outside could see. They want to make this about us, about our relationship. We make it about the work, about results, about proving you earned your position before anything personal started. She studied him, conflict clear in the set of her jaw. Finally, she nodded. Okay, but if this gets ugly, then we handle ugly together. He let himself smile, small and reassuring. But Eva, when we go public eventually, it won't be because Marcus Thornton forced our hand. It'll be because we're ready and your track record is bulletproof. 6 months, she echoed. We can do 6 months. We can do 6 months. The words felt like a promise, like a challenge, like the opening move in a chess game where the stakes were everything they'd worked for. Eva returned to her desk, spine straight and purpose clear in every movement. Dominic watched her go and felt something fierce and protective coil in his chest. Let Thornton and Victoria plot. Let them spread rumors and innuendo. He'd built an empire from nothing. He could certainly protect the woman he loved while doing it. The thought stopped him cold. Love. When had he started thinking in those terms? It had been less than a week, barely 3 days since he'd discovered the truth about her virginity. 24 hours since they'd made their relationship official. But watching Eva settle at her desk, already pulling up Dallas project files with the focused intensity he'd learned to admire, Dominic realized timing didn't matter. She'd challenged him, trusted him, chosen him despite every rational reason to run. If that wasn't worth fighting for, nothing was. His phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Interesting choice, Dominic. Let's see how long this one lasts. V. He deleted it without responding. Victoria could play her games. Marcus could make his threats. Dominic Sterling had spent 20 years building an empire through ruthless focus and strategic brilliance. Now he'd apply those same skills to protecting what mattered most. The woman currently reviewing financial models at her desk, completely unaware that she'd become the most important project of his life. In the 3 weeks that followed their decision to keep the relationship hidden, a pattern emerged as predictable as Manhattan's grid system. Professional distance under fluorescent office lights. Desperate intimacy behind closed doors. The duality carved fault lines through Eva's composure and tested Dominic's conviction that secrecy protected more than it damaged. By Friday of week 3, the cracks were showing. Eva stood on the deck of Dominic's Hamptons house, barefoot despite October chill, watching the Atlantic perform its endless assault on the shoreline. She'd driven separately in her Honda, maintaining the fiction of independence, the illusion that she wasn't orbiting his world like a captured moon. Wind whipped her hair into tangles she didn't bother smoothing. The penthouse felt like a cage gilded in marble and privilege. This place, at least, offered breathing room. Dominic emerged with 2 glasses of wine, settling beside her with the ease of someone who'd purchased solitude and knew its value. You're thinking too loud. Dallas presentation is Tuesday. I've run the projections until the numbers blur. She accepted the wine without looking at him, gaze fixed on waves that rose and crashed with mathematical regularity. If I miss something, if we lose because I wasn't thorough enough, we won't lose. Your analysis could survive academic peer review. He set his glass on the railing, hands finding her shoulders. Eva, you've checked every assumption 43 times. At some point, preparation becomes paralysis. She wanted to argue, to insist that 44 checks might reveal the flaw that 43 had missed. But his thumbs were working knots from her shoulders, and the ocean's rhythm was hypnotic, and Friday night rules meant she could let guard down for 12 precious hours. Lillian cornered me yesterday. Lunch invitation that felt more like interrogation. Eva's voice stayed neutral, reporting facts rather than acknowledging the anxiety they provoked. 40 minutes of careful questions about you. Whether you seemed distracted lately, whether I'd noticed changes in your routine. Dominic's hand stilled. What did you tell her? That you're exactly as obsessed with quarterly projections as always. That your personal life remains a mystery to everyone below executive level. She turned to face him, wind plastering shirt fabric against her frame. But she's watching, Dominic. They're all watching. I can feel speculation every time I walk into a conference room. The fear beneath her clinical recitation twisted something in his chest. 3 weeks of careful performance, and still the scrutiny intensified. Then Tuesday you walk into that Dallas presentation and demonstrate why hiring you was the smartest decision I've made in a decade. Not because of us, because you're that exceptional. And when they whisper that I slept my way to strategic advisor, let them whisper. Results silence gossip more effectively than denials ever could. He pulled her closer, needing the contact. Eva, you won Chicago. You identified the security vulnerability that saved our Miami project. You've earned credibility that no amount of speculation can erase. She studied him with those analytical hazel eyes that cataloged everything and forgave nothing. Whatever assessment she conducted must have satisfied her, because tension bled from her shoulders incrementally. Results silence gossip. I'm embroidering that on a pillow. Please don't. Her laugh carried genuine amusement this time, and the sound eased the knot between his shoulder blades. They migrated inside as temperature dropped, Eva claiming the leather sectional, while Dominic attempted culinary ambition beyond his skill level. Pasta carbonara, allegedly foolproof according to online recipes. Reality proved more resistant to confidence. You're scrambling the eggs instead of tempering them. Eva appeared at his elbow, hip nudging his aside with practiced efficiency. Move before you create breakfast instead of dinner. I'm following instructions. You're improvising badly. There's a difference. She took control of the pan, and he realized he'd never asked about her cooking background. Another gap in the knowledge he'd spent 3 weeks trying to fill during stolen hours. Your mother taught you? My mother worked 60-hour weeks across 3 jobs. I learned from necessity, or we ate cereal for every meal. No bitterness colored the statement, just fact delivered with the same precision she brought to financial modeling. By 12, I could stretch $30 into a week's worth of meals. Rice, beans, pasta. Nothing fancy, but we survived. The casual mention of childhood poverty reminded him how different their trajectories had been. Working-class background wasn't the same as balanced on the edge desperation. His father had died of a heart attack when Dominic was 15, but insurance and his mother's nursing income had kept them stable. Eva had known actual hunger, actual fear of eviction. I'm sorry. Inadequate words for experiences he couldn't fully comprehend. Don't be. It taught me resourcefulness. She glanced over her shoulder, offering a smile that held more strength than softness. When McKinsey partners complained about bonus structures, I thought about my mother's bleeding hands from scrubbing office floors and wanted to scream. Is that why you left McKinsey? The smile evaporated. Her focus returned to the pasta with laser intensity. I left because a senior partner decided my professional competence was invitation for harassment. When I reported him, HR made clear my career trajectory there had hit a ceiling. So I quit before they could construct a performance-based termination. Fury ignited white-hot in Dominic's gut. Give me his name. So you can do what? Challenge him to a duel? She plated carbonara with sharp, precise movements. He's still there, still untouchable, still making junior analysts' lives miserable. But I survived, rebuilt, found sterling development, found you. The progression, finding the company, finding him, suggested an equivalence that made his chest tight. Was I part of the rebuilding plan? You were a complication I didn't anticipate. She set plates on the counter, moved into his space with deliberate intent. The plan was simple: prove my competence, establish credentials, build a career that couldn't be undermined by powerful men. Then you turned out to be the kind of powerful man who listened instead of dictating, who valued my analysis even when it contradicted yours, who made me want to risk the very stability I'd spent a decade constructing. They ate standing at the counter, pasta significantly better than anything he could have produced alone. Conversation drifted to safer territory, books half read, movies avoided, the ongoing debate about proper coffee brewing methodology, normal couple exchange that felt surreal given the secrecy surrounding their relationship. Later, in his bed with moonlight painting geometric patterns across the ceiling, Eva traced idle circles on his chest. Tell me about Victoria, the real story, not the sanitized networking version. Dominic stared at shadows and weighed honesty against self-preservation. I thought I loved her. Proposed because successful CEOs need partners, right? Someone for charity galas and investor dinners. Sounds romantic. It wasn't. That was the fundamental problem. He caught her hand, stilled its movement. Victoria wanted passion, grand romantic gestures, a man who'd cancel board meetings to bring her flowers. I gave her financial security and complete emotional unavailability. And she left 3 months before the wedding. During a board meeting, actually, returned the ring in front of 12 executives and told me I'd never love anything more than winning. The memory had dulled, but still carried sting. She was probably accurate in her assessment. Eva propped herself on one elbow, expression serious in dim light. Do you still believe that? That victory matters more than anything else? The question deserved careful consideration. His entire adult identity had been built on ruthless pursuit of success. But lying here with Eva's warmth pressed against his side, her trust wrapped around them both like a blanket. I'm beginning to think I hadn't found something worth loving more than achievement. The admission emerged rough, unpolished. Or maybe I had to learn that love requires different skills in building empires. She kissed him then, slow and deep, and he let himself sink into the moment without planning tomorrow's agenda or mentally reviewing quarterly reports. Being present, like she'd requested. Not easy, but getting incrementally more natural with practice. Monday shattered the weekend's illusion with the subtlety of a car crash. Dominic arrived at 7 as always, coffee in hand and mind already sorting priorities. Dallas' final run-through was scheduled for 4 p.m. Everything needed to be immaculate, beyond reproach, flawless in ways that left no room for doubt. At 8:15, Eva walked in, navy suit that projected competence, hair pulled back with almost aggressive severity. She met his eyes across the open floor plan for precisely half a second before moving to her desk with mechanical precision. The performance should have reassured him. Instead, it made his chest ache with the wrongness of pretending she was merely another employee. Harrison appeared at 9:30, tablet loaded with bad news judging by his expression. We have a situation. Dominic looked up from contracts he'd been reviewing without retaining a single clause. Define situation. Kevin Park, 3rd consecutive Monday calling in sick. Harrison's tone conveyed volumes about his skepticism. IT flagged his computer during routine security sweeps, cleared browser history, encrypted file transfers, access patterns that raise flags. Kevin Park, their CFO for a decade, married with 2 kids in college, reliable, competent, trusted with Sterling Development's most sensitive financial data. The implications of Harrison's suspicion made Dominic's stomach clench. You think he's compromised? I think he's meeting with someone he doesn't want us knowing about. And given Marcus Thornton's pattern of always being one step ahead on Dallas bidding, I'd bet significant money on who that someone is. Corporate espionage was rare, but not unheard of, especially on $600 million projects. If Kevin was feeding information to Thornton, It explained the competitor's uncanny ability to anticipate Sterling's moves. Get me evidence before we make accusations. I won't destroy a man's career on instinct. Dominic stood, moved to the window overlooking 42 floors of vertical ambition that suddenly felt precarious. But Harrison, keep this absolutely quiet. Paranoia spreads faster than facts. Harrison nodded and departed, leaving Dominic with thoughts that spiraled in uncomfortable directions. How much damage had already occurred if Kevin was actually betraying them? What information had leaked? How did they plug the breach without creating panic? He needed Eva's analytical mind, her pattern recognition skills. But summoning her to his office again would feed exactly the speculation they were trying to starve. The intercom buzzed, interrupting his strategic paralysis. Mr. Sterling, visitors in the lobby. Marcus Thornton and Victoria Ashford. No appointment, but claim it's urgent regarding Dallas. Every muscle in Dominic's body went rigid. Marcus showing up unannounced was aggressive posturing. Bringing Victoria was psychological warfare. Timing it for the day before their presentation was pure tactical calculation. Send them up, conference room B. Get Miss Whitmore and Mr. Blake. He kept his voice level despite adrenaline spiking. They wanted to throw him off balance. He wouldn't give them the satisfaction. Through his office window, he watched Ava receive the summons. Her spine straightened fractionally before she rose with perfect composure. Harrison was already converging on the conference room. 3 points of a triangle preparing for combat. Marcus Thornton entered like he owned the building. 48 years old, but carrying himself with the arrogance of someone who'd crushed competitors since his 20s. Custom suit, Italian shoes, silver-touched hair styled for maximum gravitas. Behind him, Victoria moved with predatory grace. Shorter hair than Dominic remembered, styled into something that weaponized professional competence. Her eyes found his, and the malice there was a physical impact. Dominic. Marcus extended a hand that Dominic shook because corporate theater demanded it. Appreciate you seeing us without notice. You said urgent. Dominic's tone stayed neutral, bored even. Never let them see the spike in pulse rate. Indeed. Marcus settled into a chair without invitation, Victoria flanking him like a particularly elegant attack dog. We need to discuss Dallas, specifically concerning allegations we've received regarding your bid. Eva, standing near the door with Harrison, went absolutely still. Dominic felt rather than saw her reaction, peripheral vision cataloging the micro-expression of shock before professional mask locked into place. Allegations? Keep voice level, mildly curious at most. Elaborate. That your proposal contains proprietary information belonging to Thornton Industries. Marcus's smile held no warmth whatsoever. Financial projections and architectural renderings our team developed 6 months ago. The accusation was outrageous, baseless, and strategically brilliant because it forced defensive posture without requiring actual proof. That's absurd. Our Dallas proposal is entirely original. Is it? Victoria spoke for the first time, voice honey-sweet and poisonous. We have documentation suggesting otherwise. Email correspondence, time-stamped files, evidence that someone on your team accessed our servers without authorization. Harrison leaned forward, expression thunderous. You're accusing us of corporate espionage? We're suggesting the possibility. Marcus spread his hands in performance of reasonableness. Naturally, we'd prefer to avoid legal proceedings. Lawsuits damage both parties' reputations. Bad optics all around. Eva's voice cut through rising tension, calm and analytical. What do you want? Marcus's attention swiveled to her, and Dominic resisted the urge to physically interpose himself. Ms. Whitmore, Sterling's brilliant new strategic advisor. I've heard impressive things about your work. You didn't answer my question. No fear, no deference. Just cool professionalism that made Dominic simultaneously proud and terrified. If you're not pursuing legal action, you want something else. What? Victoria's smile sharpened like a blade being stropped. Perceptive. We want Sterling Development to withdraw from Dallas bidding. Publicly cite scheduling conflicts or resource constraints. Clean exit. And if we refuse? Dominic already knew but needed it spoken aloud. Then we file suit, submit our evidence to the Texas Development Authority, launch an investigation that will tie up your company for months. Marcus stood, buttoned his suit jacket with theatrical precision. Even if you're eventually cleared, which I'm confident you would be, the delay and negative publicity would be devastating to your business. Extortion. Elegant, deniable extortion that would be nearly impossible to fight without the very publicity they threatened. Withdraw and Thornton wins by default. Fight in the ensuing legal battle damages Sterling regardless of outcome. I need to consult with my team. The words tasted like ashes. Of course. We'll expect your decision by tomorrow morning. Marcus moved toward the door, pausing beside Eva with deliberate invasion of her personal space. Ms. Whitmore, pleasure meeting you. I hope Dominic truly appreciates what an asset you are. The emphasis on appreciates was deliberately crude. Eva's jaw tightened, but composure held, offering only the slightest nod of acknowledgement. Victoria lingered after Marcus departed, gaze locked on Dominic with intensity that made his skin crawl. You always did have excellent taste in women. Let's hope this one ends better than the last. Then she was gone, heels clicking down the corridor like gunshots. The conference room erupted the moment elevator doors closed. That's complete bullshit. Harrison paced like a caged predator. Pure intimidation tactics. They have nothing concrete. They have enough to make fighting painful. Dominic scrubbed a hand over his face, exhaustion crashing through adrenaline. Even baseless accusations create doubt. Clients don't want suppliers under investigation. Eva had moved to the window, arms crossed, staring at the city below with expression Dominic couldn't read. When she finally spoke, her voice carried strange quality, distant, analytical, like she was solving equations rather than processing attacks. They wouldn't risk this maneuver unless they possessed something concrete. Kevin Park. It's Kevin, isn't it? Harrison and Dominic exchanged glances. Eva turned, reading confirmation in their faces. How long have you suspected? Since this morning. Dominic moved toward her but stopped short of touching. Too many potential observers. We don't have proof yet. But it fits the pattern. Eva's mind was clearly racing, connecting data points at computational speed. Cleared browser history, suspicious absences. If Kevin's been feeding them information, they'd have timestamps and access logs, enough to construct a circumstantial case even if actual files are original work. So what's our play? Harrison looked between them, frustration evident. We can't withdraw. Dallas is $600 million. Losing would devastate our competitive position for the next 3 years. Eva's expression shifted, settling into something determined and slightly reckless. We proved Kevin acted alone. Unauthorized access that Sterling Development had no knowledge of. We terminate him publicly. Report him to authorities ourselves. Beat Marcus to the narrative. It was ruthless, brilliant, and required sacrificing a decade-long employee with a family depending on his income. Kevin has 2 daughters in college. Dominic heard the objection even as he recognized its necessity. Mortgage, medical bills for his wife's treatment. Kevin made his choice when he decided to betray you. Eva's tone held no sympathy, only strategic clarity. We can offer him a deal. Quiet resignation, references for future employment, severance package, but only if he cooperates fully and provides documentation of his communications with Thornton. Harrison was nodding. It could work. If we move fast, file reports today, we control the story. Sterling Development becomes the victim rather than the perpetrator. Dominic looked at Eva, saw the steel beneath professional exterior, remembered exactly why he'd hired her. This was the woman who'd clawed out of poverty through pure determination. who'd survived harassment at McKinsey and rebuilt her career from scratch. She didn't flinch from hard decisions because her entire life had been hard decisions. Do it. The words emerged rough. Harrison, locate Kevin. Bring him here. Eva, start documenting everything we know about the breach. Tim's, access logs, anything proving this was individual malfeasance rather than corporate policy. They moved with synchronized efficiency, Eva already pulling out her laptop, Harrison heading for the door. But before Harrison could leave, Eva's voice stopped him cold. Wait, if Victoria and Marcus are coordinating, she might have helped Kevin access Thornton's systems, created false evidence of our theft, while actually stealing from them to plant in our files. Her fingers flew across keyboard, pulling up data that made Dominic's pulse spike with hope. If I can prove bidirectional data flow, then we demonstrate they manufactured evidence. Dominic finished, possibility crystallizing. Their entire accusation collapses. Eva's smile was sharp as surgical steel. Exactly. The next 6 hours dissolved into controlled chaos. Kevin Park, summoned at 2 p.m., collapsed under questioning within 15 minutes. Yes, he'd met with Victoria Ashford. Yes, he'd provided proprietary information. No, he hadn't realized he was being manipulated to manufacture evidence of Sterling's supposed theft. The man's hands trembled as he signed the confession Harrison's attorney had prepared. Tears tracked his face when Dominic explained the severance package, generous considering the circumstances, contingent on complete cooperation. My daughter's medical bills. I needed the money. Victoria said it was just consulting, that it wouldn't hurt anyone, that Sterling would never know. Enough. Dominic couldn't listen to justifications. Betrayal was betrayal regardless of motivation. You're done here, Kevin. Security will escort you out. After Kevin departed, Dominic stood alone in his office, watching the sun descend toward the Hudson. Victory felt hollow. They'd identified the breach and gathered evidence, but trust had shattered. An employee of 10 years had chosen money over loyalty. And somewhere in Manhattan, Victoria was orchestrating revenge with Marcus as her willing weapon. A soft knock interrupted his brooding. Eva entered without waiting for acknowledgement, closing the door behind her. IT pulled the access logs. Data flow went both directions, exactly as I suspected. Victoria gave Kevin credentials to access Thornton's servers, then used his login to steal their files and plant them in our system. She set her laptop on his desk, displaying spreadsheets and metadata. We have enough to prove conspiracy. Marcus's accusation falls apart the moment we present this. Relief should have flooded through him. Instead, Dominic felt only exhaustion settling into his bones. Forward everything to legal. Have them prepare a report for the Texas Development Authority. Already done. Eva moved around his desk, and for the first time all day, allowed herself to stand close enough that he could smell her perfume. Dominic, we won. They tried to destroy us and we outmaneuvered them. At what cost? He gestured vaguely toward the office beyond his window. Kevin's family is devastated. Our competitors know we're vulnerable to infiltration. Victoria is planning her next attack. So we stay vigilant. Her hand found his, squeezed gently. We protect what matters and accept that building something valuable means defending it constantly. The wisdom in her words, hard-earned through her own battles, steadied him more than platitudes would have. She understood that success attracted enemies, that empire building was warfare by other means. Come here. He pulled her closer, needing physical reassurance of her presence. Just for 1 minute. She came willingly, fitting against him in a way that felt inevitable. They stood like that while city lights began flickering on below, her head against his chest and his arms wrapped around her shoulders. We can't do this at the office. Her words were muffled against his shirt. Someone could walk in, see us. I know. Lillian's already suspicious. If she finds evidence, she won't. He pressed a kiss to the top of her head, allowed himself this one moment before professionalism reasserted control. Go home. Rest. Tomorrow we present Dallas and prove we're untouchable. She pulled away reluctantly, already rebuilding professional distance. But at the door she paused. Dominic, for what it's worth, I think you handled Kevin with more grace than he deserved. Then she was gone, leaving him alone with thoughts that refused to settle into coherent strategy. Tuesday's Dallas presentation went flawlessly. Eva commanded the conference room with quiet authority, walking the development committee through financial projections and sustainability metrics with surgical precision. Dominic watched from the sidelines, contributing only when directly questioned, letting her brilliance speak for itself. They won the contract by unanimous vote. Celebration erupted back at Sterling Development, champagne in the break room, congratulations from colleagues who'd worked on supporting analysis. Eva accepted praise with gracious professionalism, deflecting credit to team members while Dominic observed from his office doorway. He wanted to pull her aside, kiss her until the professional mask cracked, tell her she was extraordinary and brilliant and everything he'd never known he needed. But Lillian Cross stood 3 feet away, watching Eva with narrow-eyed assessment, and Dominic forced himself to remain distant. That night, Eva came to the penthouse at 11. She'd texted 40 minutes earlier, "Need to see you. Now." He'd paced until the elevator announced her arrival, then pulled her inside the moment doors opened. She came willingly, wrapping herself around him with desperate intensity that spoke of pressure building beyond sustainable limits. They didn't make it to the bedroom. The couch proved sufficient, though later he'd insist on carrying her to proper comfort. For now, there was only desperate need to connect after a day of forced distance, to prove the professional performance hadn't eroded what existed between them. Afterward, tangled together with her head on his chest, Eva spoke into the darkness. Lillian cornered me in the bathroom after the celebration. Dominic's hand, which had been tracing lazy patterns on her spine, stilled. What did she say? That she noticed how you looked at me during the presentation, that it seemed personal rather than professional. Eva's voice held carefully controlled emotion. She said she was concerned for me, that powerful men often take advantage of young female employees, that I should be careful. Rage ignited in his gut, hot and immediate. She has no right. She's not entirely wrong, though. Eva shifted to look at him, hazel eyes serious. You are powerful. I am younger. If someone examined our situation without context, they'd assume exactly what she's implying. We're consenting adults in a relationship, a secret relationship between a CEO and his subordinate. She sat up, pulling the throw blanket around her shoulders. Dominic, I knew what I was signing up for. I chose this. But the longer we hide, the more suspicious it looks when we eventually go public. He sat up as well, catching her hands. We agreed to 6 months. I know, and I'm not backing out, I'm just... She trailed off, searching for words. I'm exhausted from performing, from monitoring every glance and gesture, from pretending I don't want to reach for you in meetings. The confession matched his own frustration so perfectly it hurt. 3 more months, then we go public and let them think what they want. Your track record will speak for itself. Will it? Doubt flickered across her features. Or will they say I won Dallas because you were sleeping with me? That every achievement is tainted by our relationship? He didn't have reassuring answers, couldn't promise that going public wouldn't invite exactly the scrutiny she feared. Corporate America was brutal to women in ways it never was to men. Dominic's relationship history was irrelevant to his professional reputation. Eva's would become ammunition for anyone questioning her competence. Then we don't go public. The words emerged before he'd fully thought them through. We stay private, not secret, I'll never hide you, but we keep our personal life personal. No announcements, no declarations, just us. She studied him for a long moment. You'd be okay with that? Never acknowledging me publicly as your partner? I'd acknowledge you as my strategic advisor, my colleague, the brilliant woman who won us Dallas. He cupped her face, forcing her to hold his gaze. But the personal stuff? That's ours. Private doesn't mean shameful. It means protected. Tears gathered in her eyes but didn't fall. I want to believe that's sustainable. It is sustainable. We make it sustainable. He kissed her gently, tasting salt and promise. Eva, I don't need the world to validate our relationship. I just need you to believe in it. The words hung between them, weighted with meaning neither was quite ready to fully acknowledge. 3 weeks of secret meetings and stolen moments, and he was already thinking in terms of permanence, already imagining a future that extended beyond the next quarterly report. The realization should have terrified him. Instead, it settled into his chest like an anchor, heavy but grounding. His phone buzzed on the coffee table. Work email. He reached for it automatically, decades of conditioning overriding intention. Eva caught his wrist. Don't. It might be important. It's 11 p.m. on a Tuesday. Nothing's that important. Her grip tightened. You promised to be present when we're together. She was right. He was backsliding into old patterns Victoria had complained about, letting work intrude on personal time because work felt safer than vulnerability. He set the phone down, screen facing away from temptation. Sorry, old habits. I know. She settled back against him, and he felt her smile against his chest. But Dominic, you're getting better. 3 weeks ago, you would have read that email. Small progress, but progress nonetheless. They talked until exhaustion dragged them towards sleep, migrating to the bedroom when the couch proved uncomfortable. Ava fell asleep mid-sentence, her breathing evening out while Dominic stared at the ceiling and thought about Kevin Park's betrayal. About Victoria's calculated malice, about the precarious foundation they'd built their relationship on. Morning would bring new challenges. Marcus wouldn't accept defeat gracefully. Victoria would escalate. Office gossip would intensify as pattern recognition kicked in among observant colleagues. But for now, with Eva's warmth pressed against his side and her trust wrapped around them both, Dominic let himself believe they could weather whatever came next. Thursday morning shattered that belief with vicious efficiency. The email arrived at 7:15 while Dominic was reviewing overnight messages. Anonymous sender. Subject line that made his blood run cold. Truth about Evangeline Whitmore. Sent to the entire Sterling Development staff list. He opened it with hands that had started trembling before conscious thought registered the implications. Everyone knows Evangeline Whitmore fucked her way to strategic advisor. McKinsey fired her for sleeping with senior partners. Sterling's next? She's a whore who uses her body instead of her brain. How many of you have fallen for those innocent eyes? Wake up! His vision tunneled. Actual physical narrowing of peripheral awareness as rage and horror warred in his chest. Rage at whoever had crafted this poison. Horror at what Eva would feel, reading words designed to destroy her reputation and credibility. He was already moving, crossing the office toward her desk, when he saw her. Standing frozen with laptop open, face drained of all color. Around her, colleagues whispered and shot furtive glances. Lillian Cross stood near the coffee station with expression carefully neutral in a way that screamed guilt. Eva's eyes found his across the floor. The devastation in her gaze cut him deeper than any business loss ever could. Then she closed her laptop with mechanical precision, gathered her bag, and walked toward the elevator without a word to anyone. Without looking back, without giving anyone the satisfaction of seeing her break. Dominic caught her at the lobby, security and professional distance be damned. Ava, wait! Don't. Her voice emerged flat, dead, shock settling into places that should hold anger. Don't defend me. Don't make promises. Don't tell me it'll be fine. We'll find who sent this. We'll sue for defamation. It doesn't matter. She turned to face him fully, and the emptiness in her expression was worse than tears would have been. Even if we prove it's lies, people will believe it. They want to believe it. It confirms what they already suspected about how I got here. I'll issue a statement. Explain you were hired months before anything personal started. And that makes it better? Her laugh was shattered glass. Dominic, you defending me just proves their point, that I need your protection because I can't succeed on merit alone. She was right. Any attempt to shield her would reinforce the narrative. But watching her stand there with shoulders straight despite devastation and doing nothing felt like complicity in her destruction. What do you want me to do? Nothing. She stepped back, creating physical distance. I need space. Time to think without you nearby, making me want to believe this is survivable. Eva, please, the word cracked. I can't do this right now. Can't be near you and think clearly about what comes next. She turned and walked out of the building, leaving Dominic standing in the lobby with security footage recording his obvious distress and the certainty that he just lost something irreplaceable settling into his bones like frost. Eva's Brooklyn apartment felt smaller than the single time Dominic had seen it in photographs she'd shown him. Fourth floor walk-up, studio efficiency with furniture that had survived multiple moves and showed every scar. She'd mentioned the address once during their second week together, establishing boundaries he'd respected. Privacy mattered to her. Independence was armor against dependence. Those boundaries meant nothing now. He'd waited 4 hours. 4 hours of Harrison fielding concerned questions while IT tried to trace the email's origin through server logs and encryption layers. Anonymous sender using burner accounts routed through overseas proxies. Professional-grade obfuscation. Either Victoria's legal expertise or Marcus's money buying sophisticated revenge. The door opened before he could knock. Eva stood backlit by the apartment's single window, still wearing the navy suit from this morning. Mascara tracked down her cheeks in dried rivers. Eyes red-rimmed but currently dry, like she'd exhausted her capacity for tears and moved into numbness. I asked for space. No heat in her voice, just exhaustion that went bone deep. I know, I'm here anyway. He stepped inside without invitation, closing the door behind him. Lavender and old books. A life built carefully within financial constraints. Eva, we need to talk about what happens next. There's nothing to discuss. She moved to the kitchen alcove, barely 6 feet of counter space and a 2-burner stove, and poured water from a filtered pitcher. Her hand stayed steady despite everything. I'm resigning Monday, effective immediately. You'll provide neutral references. We end this cleanly before more damage occurs. The words hit like physical blows. He'd expected anger, accusations, demands for justice, not this calm dismantling of everything they'd built. You're surrendering. I'm being realistic. She faced him fully, and the defeat in her expression carved something hollow in his chest. Dominic, even if we prove the email was lies, I can't work there anymore. Can't walk into strategy sessions wondering who thinks I'm a whore. Can't present analysis knowing half the room believes I'm fucking you for career advancement. So Marcus wins. Victoria wins. They destroy your reputation and you just accept it? What choice do I have? The question emerged sharp, brittle. Fight back and prove their narrative? That I'm the vengeful mistress who can't handle professional criticism? Or quietly disappear and maybe salvage some dignity? The choice is to stand with me and prove them wrong. He crossed the small space, caught her shoulders before she could retreat into herself. Eva, I love you. The confession hung between them, raw and unplanned. He'd meant to build to it gradually, create the perfect moment, wait until she was ready to hear it. But standing in her tiny apartment while she contemplated surrender, the words demanded release. Her eyes widened. Shock replaced exhaustion for one heartbeat before fresh tears gathered. You don't mean that. I've never meant anything more. His thumbs traced her collarbones through fabric and skin. I love your brilliance, your resilience, The way you fight for what's right even when it costs you everything. The way you chose me despite every logical reason to run. I love waking up next to you. I love that you're the only person who calls me on my failures and doesn't let me hide behind corporate success. Dominic, I'm not finished. The words kept coming, unstoppable now. I love you enough to fight for us even when you're too hurt to fight for yourself. And I'm asking you to trust me one more time, to stand beside me and prove that love doesn't diminish professional competence. She shook her head, dislodging tears that tracked fresh paths. Loving me doesn't change what happened, doesn't erase that email or repair my credibility. No, but it means you don't face this alone. He pulled her closer, needing her to understand. We go public, company-wide announcement, full transparency. We control the narrative before they do. That's insane. It'll confirm everything they suspect. It'll prove we have nothing to hide. Strategy was forming, pieces clicking into place with clarity born from absolute certainty. We show the timeline. You were hired 8 months ago, promoted 7 months ago. Our relationship began 3 weeks ago. Every achievement you earned before anything personal started. She searched his face, wanting to believe but terrified of more damage. And when they still think I slept my way to strategic advisor, then we let your work speak louder than their suspicions. Dallas proves your competence. The next project will prove it again. Eventually, noise fades because results don't lie. You're asking me to endure months of judgment. I'm asking you to trust me. He framed her face with both hands, forcing her to hold his gaze. To believe that we can be together and still maintain integrity, that our relationship doesn't invalidate your achievements. Silence stretched long enough that doubt crept in. Maybe he was asking too much. Maybe the cost was insurmountable. Maybe, okay, the word emerged barely above a whisper. We fight. Relief hit so hard his knees nearly buckled. He kissed her instead, pouring everything unsaid into the contact. Gratitude and desperation and fierce protectiveness that came from loving someone while watching them hurt. When they separated, both breathing hard, Eva's expression had shifted. Still wounded but no longer defeated. Determination replacing despair in incremental degrees. But Dominic, if we do this, complete transparency, no half measures. We tell the truth and accept whatever consequences come. He understood what she wasn't saying. The virginity, the morning discovery, the vulnerability of that first revelation. She was asking if he'd expose even their most intimate details to protect her reputation. Whatever it takes, the promise felt sacred. I won't let them destroy you. They've already tried. Her smile was small but genuine. I'm still standing. Saturday morning fed Dominic at Sterling Development, despite weekend silence, preparing for Monday's announcement. Harrison arrived at 9, coffee and skepticism in equal measure. Patricia was not pleased about me abandoning breakfast. This is critical. Dominic gestured to the conference room where he'd spent 2 hours arranging documentation. Timeline charts, email confirmations, board meeting minutes. Monday, I'm announcing my relationship with Eva. I need your support. Harrison's eyebrows rose fractionally. You're going public. After that email, hiding accomplishes nothing. We control the narrative or it controls us. You think announcing will improve things? Harrison studied the evidence Dominic had assembled. People will still assume the worst. Let them assume. Eva's track record proves competence. We weather the initial storm and move forward. Harrison was quiet, reviewing documents with a thoroughness that made him invaluable. Finally, he nodded. I'll support you both. But Dominic, understand what you're inviting. Board scrutiny, competitor ammunition. This won't be easy. Nothing worth having ever is. They spent 3 hours preparing, drafting announcements, anticipating questions, building counter-arguments for every accusation Marcus or Victoria might level. Dominic's phone rang mid-afternoon. Eva. My mother saw the email. Someone forwarded it to her. Eva's voice held forced calm, barely masking panic. She's catching a bus to Manhattan. Arrives in 2 hours. Dominic's stomach dropped. Meeting Eva's mother under these circumstances felt like walking into ambush without armor. Does she know about us? She knows I've been dating someone, doesn't know it's you. Waited pause. Dominic, she's going to be protective, angry. She's watched men hurt me my entire life. This email confirms every fear she has. Then I'll prove her fears wrong. He was already gathering his coat. Where should I meet you? My apartment. But don't expect her to be won over easily. My mother doesn't trust charm or money. She trusts actions. Maggie Whitmore was smaller than her daughter, but radiated identical fierce intelligence. 49 years old with hands roughened by decades of cleaning offices, eyes that cataloged Dominic's expensive suit in one sweeping assessment. Mr. Sterling, she didn't offer her hand. The man sleeping with my daughter. Eva winced. Mom, it's accurate. Dominic met Maggie's gaze steadily. I have been, and I love her. And I'm here to ask your blessing because Eva deserves family support while we navigate this situation. Maggie's expression didn't soften. She moved into the apartment with ease of frequent visits, claiming the armchair and leaving Dominic and Eva to crowd the small sofa. Deliberate power dynamic, Maggie controlling space despite being guest. You love her. How convenient after she wins you a $600 million contract. I loved her before Dallas, before anything physical happened. I've loved her since she challenged my strategy 2 months into her employment and proved me wrong. He refused defensiveness. The Dallas win just demonstrated what I already knew. She's exceptional. And the email calling her a whore? How are you handling that? Monday, company-wide announcement. Full transparency about our relationship. Timeline proving Eva earned her position through merit. Legal action against whoever sent defamatory messages. Maggie turned to Eva. You agreed to this? Making your private life public? I did. Eva's hand found Dominic's, squeezed. Because hiding hasn't protected me. Because I'd rather fight than run. Your work won't matter to people who've already decided you're sleeping your way to success. Maggie's laugh held no humor. I've lived that judgment. No amount of hard work erased their conclusions about me. You're right, Dominic spoke before Eva could respond. People will judge, assume the worst. But Mrs. Whitmore, I watched my mother endure judgment after my father died. She was a nurse raising a son alone, and people whispered she must have done something wrong. Never mind that he'd had a heart attack. Never mind that she'd loved him completely. He leaned forward. Judgment is inevitable, but Eva is strong enough to weather it, and I love her enough to stand beside her through every ugly moment. Silence stretched. Maggie studied him with eyes that missed nothing, weighing sincerity against decades of learned distrust. Finally, she turned to Eva. You're sure about him? I'm sure. Even knowing it might cost you everything? Especially knowing that. Eva's voice held absolute conviction. Mom, I've spent 32 years protecting myself, being careful. But Dominic makes me want to risk, to believe that love is worth fighting for. Maggie's eyes glistened, but no tears fell. She stood, crossed to Eva, pulled her daughter into fierce embrace. Over Eva's shoulder, she met Dominic's gaze with intensity that made promises and threats simultaneously. You hurt her. I don't care how rich you are. I will destroy you. Fair enough. He meant it. The tension broke incrementally. By the time Maggie left 3 hours later, Dominic felt thoroughly examined and cautiously approved. Monday morning arrived with the inevitability of a tidal wave. Dominic stood before 200 employees in Sterling Development's largest conference room, Eva beside him and Harrison flanking his other side. Legal sat front row. HR had reviewed every policy. Thank you for coming, his voice carried across the room. I have an important announcement regarding both business and personal matters. Silence fell thick. Every eye tracked to Eva. 3 weeks ago, Eva Whitmore and I began a romantic relationship. Let the words land. Let shock ripple. I'm making this announcement now because recent events have made clear that transparency serves us better than secrecy. He pulled up the timeline slide. Dates, documentation, evidence of Eva's promotion occurring before their relationship began. Eva was hired 8 months ago, promoted 7 months ago. Both decisions based entirely on her qualifications. Our relationship began 3 weeks ago, long after she'd proven her value to this company through the Dallas win and other achievements. Eva stepped forward, and pride surged at her composure. I know some of you believe I slept my way to this position. She let the admission hang. So let me be clear. I will continue proving competence through results. Judge me by my work, not my relationship. Questions came, some genuine, others hostile. Through it all, they maintained united front. Harrison defended when necessary. Legal clarified policy compliance. 40 minutes later, the meeting ended with scattered applause and significant murmuring. People filed out, already gossiping. Dominic watched them go and felt exposure's weight settle onto his shoulders. 2 days later, Marcus called an emergency board meeting. Marcus sat at the conference table head like he owned it. Victoria beside him with legal documents stacked ominously. Dominic entered with Harrison and Eva, the latter's presence clearly surprising several board members. Dominic, Marcus smiled without warmth. Thank you for bringing Ms. Whitmore. This concerns her directly. Dominic's gut clenched. What game are you playing? No game, civic duty. Marcus pushed a folder across the table. Documentation proving Sterling Development engaged in corporate espionage. Specifically, Ms. Whitmore accessed our proprietary servers using credentials obtained through coercion. Board members grabbed folders, access logs, timestamps, IP addresses traced to Eva's computer, documents downloaded from Thornton servers matching files in Sterling's Dallas proposal. Kevin Park evidence repackaged and weaponized against Eva. This is fabricated, Eva's voice cut through shock, clear and cold. Those logs show my IP because someone used my computer without authorization. Convenient. Victoria's legal precision was razor sharp. You're claiming you were hacked? I'm claiming Kevin Park had physical access to my workstation and used my credentials. Eva pulled out her laptop, fingers flying, and I can prove it. She connected to the display, pulling up metadata. Timestamps showing Eva in meetings when downloads occurred. Security footage of Kevin at her desk during off hours. Email chains proving Victoria had provided Kevin with Thornton credentials. Kevin Park worked with Victoria Ashford to manufacture evidence while actually stealing from Thornton Industries. Eva's presentation was surgical. They planted stolen files to create the appearance of corporate theft. Board members stared. Marcus's smile had frozen into something brittle. Furthermore, Eva advanced to the next slide, and Dominic's breath caught. Thornton Industries has engaged in systematic bribery of city officials across 4 states, building permits expedited through cash payments, safety inspections falsified, 3 construction deaths in Chicago directly attributable to code violations overlooked after bribes. The evidence was devastating. Bank transfers, recorded calls, contractor testimony. Eva had spent a week building a case that didn't just defend Sterling, it destroyed Marcus completely. Where did you get this? Marcus's voice had lost all civility. Sources tired of watching you break laws and endanger lives. Eva's gaze was steady, merciless. I've submitted copies to the FBI, SEC, and Texas Development Authority. Your empire is done. Victoria stood abruptly. These allegations are actionable. They're documented facts, Harrison interjected. We're prepared to cooperate fully with federal investigations. The board erupted. Several members pulled out phones. Marcus sat frozen as implications sank in. Charlotte Reeves, retired judge and Sterling's most principled investor, silenced the room. Mr. Thornton, Miss Ashford, I believe this meeting is concluded. Sterling's board will conduct our own investigation, but preliminary evidence suggests Miss Whitmore has successfully defended both her integrity and this company. Dismissal and vindication simultaneously. Marcus stood with jerky movements, Victoria gathering documents with shaking hands. At the door, Marcus turned back. This isn't over, Sterling. Yes, it is. Dominic's voice carried absolute conviction. You tried to destroy the woman I love. You failed. Now you'll face consequences for every law you've broken. Marcus left. The board remained, and Charlotte fixed Dominic with penetrating stare. Mr. Sterling, while I appreciate Mrs. Whitmore's defense, I'm concerned about circumstances that brought her into this meeting. Her involvement was professional, not personal. Dominic cut in firmly. She's the strategic advisor who identified the breach and gathered evidence. Her presence was appropriate and necessary. Charlotte studied Eva. You understand the scrutiny this relationship will bring? I do. Eva met the judge's gaze without flinching. But my work speaks for itself. Dallas was a $600 million win. This evidence saved Sterling from false accusations. I've earned my position through results. Something shifted in Charlotte's expression. Respect. Very well. Meeting adjourned. The aftermath unfolded over 6 weeks. FBI confirmed Eva's evidence. Marcus Thornton indicted on federal corruption charges. Victoria Ashford faced disbarment. Kevin Park testified extensively in exchange for immunity. Sterling Development's reputation strengthened. Media coverage was positive. The CEO who stood by principles and the woman he loved. 3 months after the board meeting, Dominic stood in his bedroom, the same room where he'd discovered Eva's secret. He'd asked her to meet him with unusual formality. She arrived curious and wary. You said this was important? It is. He pulled the ring box from his pocket. Platinum band with single diamond. This is where we started, where you trusted me with something precious, where I realized how deeply I'd fallen. Understanding flickered. Dominic, Evangeline Whitmore, will you marry me? Build a life with me? Face whatever comes next together? Silence lasted only heartbeats. Then she was nodding, laughing, crying. Yes, obviously yes. He slipped the ring on, kissed her with desperate relief. When they separated, she was shaking her head in wonder. You proposed in the same room where you found out I was a virgin. That's either romantic or unhinged. Can't it be both? With you? Absolutely. She kissed him again. I love you, even when you're unhinged. I love you, especially when you're brilliant. 6 months later, pregnant and glowing, Eva stood in their bedroom with different perspective. The penthouse had become theirs. Her books on shelves, her presence woven into every corner. Remember when I was terrified you'd be angry about the blood? She leaned against him, his arms around her expanding waist. I remember thinking I'd hurt you. You took nothing, I gave it freely. Her hands covered his on her belly. And look where it led. Marriage, baby, partnership that works. He kissed her temple. Your mother was right that people would judge, but she was wrong that your work wouldn't matter. Dallas was just the beginning. Every project proved your value. Turns out excellence is its own defense. She smiled, fierce and triumphant. I'd do it again. Her voice was quiet but absolute. All of it. The judgment, the fights, for this, for us. So would I. His hand traced patterns where their daughter kicked. Every brutal, beautiful moment. They stood while the city transformed from dusk to night. 2 people who'd learned that some things were worth bleeding for. That trust, once given and honored, built foundations stronger than steel. That the cost of love was high, but the value beyond measure. The blood on the sheets had been washed away months ago, but what it represented, vulnerability, trust, courage to choose love despite fear, That remained, woven into who they'd become together. Standing in their shared space with their future growing between them, Dominic understood what he'd been searching for. Not just success or empire building, but connection, partnership, someone who saw his flaws and loved him anyway. Eva had been that someone from the moment she trusted him. He'd spend the rest of his life proving her trust wasn't misplaced. Outside, the city never slept. Inside, they'd found each other. And that was enough.